Hello and welcome to the Reviews Brothers. By now you all know I love me some boomer shooters, and thankfully there's a lot out there for me to get my grubby little hands on. I love the fast paced action and the fact that I don't have to worry about stories that take themselves too seriously. It's just you, a handful of mad weapons and lots of enemies to blow to bits, usually with a lot of blood thrown in for good measure. We've already talked about a bunch of boomer shooters here, which is a name I still hate by the way, but I'll get over it. So now it's time to look at even more. So how about I shut up, you press that subscribe button, and we take a look at some games, most of which were suggested by you sexy people. It cost me a lot of money, you know. Here is Dread Templar. The story goes that you are a Dread Templar, a mortal imbued with supernatural powers, on a quest for revenge against the forces of hell. You saw the brutal death of your grandfather when you were a kid, who was also a Dread Templar, at the hands of some demonic entities, and this awakens your latent powers, etc, etc. Gameplay is your classic boomer shooter stuff. You've got to make your way through maze-like levels filled with hordes of demons, traps and secrets. The game emphasises speed and precision, with fast movement and responsive controls. The combat here is intense and also very satisfying, featuring a decent variety of weapons, from dual pistols to rocket launchers and energy gauntlets. The weapons do feel good to use, and some have secondary fire modes, most notably your katanas, which you can use as a devastating projectile weapon. You even get upgrades available for your weapons or your character. For example, the double-barreled shotgun can be transformed into a demonic weapon that fires devastating beams. As you play, you'll be able to customize their abilities and weapons by exploring levels and finding the hearts and magic thingies that give you upgrade points. This definitely encourages thorough exploration and adds depth to the gameplay. The levels you play in are actually quite large, with some taking a good 20 or 30 minutes to get through, at least they did for me. But that does also include the fact that I died a lot when I was playing the game. It is no walk in the park. And that's usually on me, as the game is pretty fair. Enemies come at you thick and fast, but you have enough maneuverability and weapons to look after yourself, though I will say I would often run out of ammo for my guns. Thankfully, your katanas are powerful, and you do get a bow with unlimited arrows. You just need to survive the cooldown period. What also helps is that you can slow down time. Killing enemies and collecting blue orbs builds your meter at the top of the screen. This can then be used to enter bullet time, where everything slows down except for you. This comes in especially handy in the big battles or against some of the large bosses, which are really fun to fight. Visually, Dread Templar embraces its retro aesthetic and it's got a cool pixelated dark graphical look and really reminds me of Quake. The environments range from sort of claustrophobic corridors to actually some quite big outdoor areas. I also really like the enemy designs, and it does a good job of mixing things up between the various areas that you explore. I do have a few gripes though they are really quite minor. I don't really like that the ammo seems to be quite scarce, but again it is actually still manageable. I'm also not a big fan of the fact that the game uses save points and checkpoints in the levels. There are a few in there, but I prefer to just save scum whenever I can. Though this was never a deal breaker, and you can actually save as often as you like, you just need to go back to one of the little thingies. But other than that, this is an awesome game that I'm about halfway through, and I am really enjoying my time with it. Next up is Chop Goblins. This is a really fun shooter that doesn't take itself seriously at all, and is all the more fun for it. You play as a guy that's visiting a museum when you open a chest. Turns out it was a magical chest, much like Sydney Sweeney, except this chest unleashes an army of evil goblins that like to chop things down and kill people. As you were the git that unleashed the monsters, it's up to you to put a stop to their fun. Gameplay here is very simple and basically a case of making it to the end of the level while killing all the goblins you see along the way. You start out in the museum before moving into the streets and the underground, but then the pesky bastards open up time portals that see you visiting Dracula's castle, ancient Greece and more. It will come as no surprise that goblins are your main enemy here, and there's a few varieties of them. You've got ones that just run up to you and stab you, some have guns, some that are big huge bruisers that throw axes at you, ones that fly, and even dog goblins that take a hell of a beating. You'll even find granny goblins that shout insults at you to hurt you. It's great. You get some fun weapons. You start with a knife that's actually pretty useful, and you can actually use this at any time with the right mouse button. You also get a flintlock pistol that you steal from the museum, a shotgun, stake launcher, magic thingies, and even more. The weapons are all fun to use, and the controls here are spot on. They've also done a surprisingly good job of making certain weapons better against certain enemies, so you will be switching a fair bit. The levels themselves are reasonably large and definitely quite maze-like. As with most games like this, they soon become tricky and you'll need to explore every inch of them to find switches to open doors or items and keys that you'll need to progress. The variety in locations is actually pretty handy in keeping things fresh as well. Exploring is important for a few reasons though, as you can find upgrades for your weapons that make them more powerful or have faster reloads and that sort of thing, and you'll find plenty of hidden ammo and health stashes. You also collect coins as you play, though these are just for points, which is kind of the point here. This is not a long game and can be beaten in just a couple of hours, maybe even less when you know what you're doing, but that's what it was made for. It's meant to be a quick playthrough that you can just come back to and see if you can beat your time or score when you've got a bit of time to kill. Graphics wise, it looks good. It's got that retro look, looking like a 32 or 64-bit game. The levels are decent and I do like the different goblins and always look forward to seeing the next ones that are coming up. And it is just a fun game. It does seem a little odd at first, and that's because it is, but don't let that put you off. If you like fast-paced retro shooters, this one is definitely one to add to the collection. If you want something a little more serious, then Wrath, Aeon of Ruin might be what you're after. This one doesn't give you much in the way of story, which I really don't mind. You're some sort of unknown drifter and you turn up an island where some mystical figure tells you to go sort out the dead people and get their souls, or something along those lines. This all turns into a boomer shooter adventure filled with lots of guns, guts and getting lost in massive levels. Right off the bat you can see the Quake influences here, which is a good thing. You're in some dark, in fact often too dark, gothic levels, and you'll need to explore, finding items, weapons, keys and switches that will help you get to the next one. And you're fighting off an army of the undead to boot. The roster of enemies is definitely one of the highlights of the game for me. You get shambling zombies, zombie men with guns or melee weapon, horrid pus-covered monsters and mutants that come after you, huge gladiator-style chaps that take a hell of a beating, and there is what looks like mutated wildlife like crazy frogs and things like that come after you. A few enemies are also not so subtly close to the flying ghouls from Quake, just to name a few. It doesn't take long for the numbers of these to get quite overwhelming, though they aren't exactly smart. Most of the enemies just sort of run around at you and firing at you while you're shooting them in the face. But that's alright, the sheer numbers are often the main issue, and keeping track of everyone can be tricky. And yes, you do get some fun weapons to use against them. You've got an arm blade thingy, which is cool, but you do need to be up close. You can also use this to do an air dash. You get a pistol, shotgun, a machine gun that fires the teeth of your enemies, a pus bomb launcher, rocket launcher, and so on. The designs on these are all actually really great, and they do feel good to use with satisfying feel and great sound effects. You also get a few power-ups to use. These are basically your items, and you can choose to use them whenever you want from your inventory. So there's some that makes your attacks more powerful, there's some that make you move faster or steal health from enemies, which is all a nice touch, and it is important to use them when you're in a bit of a pickle. You can also find white skulls, and these are one of the issues I have with the game. These skulls let you quick save, but are limited. Basically like having the ribbons in the original Resident Evil, but you can use them wherever you want as long as you've got them. There's also checkpoints in the levels, which are these white totem things. Then when you die, you have the choice of going back to either your last used skull or the last checkpoint that you found, or you can restart the level completely. This is actually quite annoying, and it means you can lose a lot of progress, as the levels here are ridiculously large. I recorded nearly an hour and a half worth of footage, and I'm still playing the first level. But don't worry, I have beaten this game before. This is actually my second playthrough. The way the saving works means that you can put quick save down and then turn a corner only to find a free checkpoint, so it means you wasted one of your skulls. And it means that if you're trying to be tactical with them and not use them unless you really need to, then you can die and lose a lot of progress. The first time I played this, I actually thought it was one large open world, but that isn't the case. There are different levels here, which are, to be fair, very different to one another and quite fun to play through, but it does really take a long time to get through them, and it can make it feel a bit boring at times. Though I would have to say this is kind of similar to the original Turok games in terms of level size, and I love those games, and they had a similar saving mechanic on the N64, but hey, I'm a hypocrite, what can I say? But having said that, I do actually really enjoy this game. It's probably the least favourite one in this video, but still one I would definitely tell people that like this kind of thing to play. Now that's enough 3D nonsense, time for some sprites. This is Cultic Chapter One, the game that pretty much everyone told me to play when my other video on this topic came out a while back. Clearly inspired by games like Blood, but actually having a lot more in common with survival horror games, you play as a cop who's been working a case about missing people that's led him to an evil cult. They're not too happy about being investigated, so they kill you. At least they think they did. You soon rise from your grave and set out on a revenge mission to take down the bastards once and for all. And boy, I can really see why people told me to play this. It's great. So once you've risen from your grave, you need to explore a number of creepy downs, villages, forests and mansions where the bastard cults are hiding out so you can shoot them in the face. The game does a great job with the atmosphere and really makes you feel like you're on your own against all of this. And even though you get a lot of guns, you definitely aren't an unstoppable killing machine. Enemies come in a few variety, all a bunch of cults though. You've got ones that have axes, some with guns, in fact pretty much all of them use the same weapons that you do. There's even zombie-like monsters and even terrifying chainsaw-wielding blokes that take a hell of a lot of shots to put down, and the further you get into it, the weirder the enemies get. The combat here is really good though. The weapons all pack a punch, whether it's charging up the axe to swing off and chop someone's head in one go, or shooting them from a distance with your sniper rifle, it's always bloody and fun. You also get a few explosives like a bundle of dynamite or molotovs. With these you can either light them before throwing them, or you can just throw them without lighting them to set up a kind of trap, waiting for bad guys to get near them and then shoot the dynamite to blow it up. You can also upgrade your weapons at certain points as long as you've found all the right items that you need to do so. This comes in handy, but you really need to make sure you pick the upgrades that suit your playstyle and for the weapons that you use the most. The level design here is all very well done. It's all real world type locations and it really gives me Resident Evil 4 vibes as you go through towns, forests and so on that from an outsider's point of view would kind of look like they were real and just inhabited by strange people. But they're teeming with cultists that want to kill you and take your skin. Interestingly, the whole thing is basically one large level, though it is broken up into sections which act like the various different stages, and there's points that you'll reach that mean you can't go back. Surprisingly, a lot of it is quite open as well, and you'll be doing lots of long-range shooting. There's always places to hide though, and you'll need to be sure to stay near cover because the cultists are pretty good shots themselves, even from far away. You also need to make sure that you're exploring for secrets. There's quite a lot all over the place, and this is where you'll get things that you'll need to upgrade your weapons, as well as general health and ammo pickups, which are really handy. Because the enemies use the same weapons as you will find that ammo isn't usually too hard to come by, but you don't want to go in all guns blazing. You want to make every shot count, especially in the darker levels where it can be hard to see enemies and what they've dropped. Oh, and you'll also have to look out for traps like bear traps and trap mines. Graphics wise, I really like how it looks. I will say at first I wasn't too sure about the use of colour, but after a few minutes you realise that it's all part of the plan and actually adds quite a lot to the atmosphere of the game. And while I never found it scary, there were definitely some tense moments and the visuals did help with that. It's just a shame this is only Chapter 1. It'll take about 5 hours to get through still, but it's definitely a game that leaves you wanting more and I can't wait for Chapter 2. And if you like Cultic, then you'll want to check out Satan. You play as a church lady and her church is broken into by a bunch of Satanists. She hides in a barrel but sees everyone else get murdered. Eventually you come out of hiding and pull a crucifix off the wall. You sharpen the end of it and you guessed it, you're out for revenge. So you make your way through around 3 or 4 hours worth of levels that take you through churches, sewers, towns and enemy bases until you get to the Dark Lord himself. The game has clear influences from Blood and Cultic, but that's by no means a bad thing. And while it's not quite as polished as those games, keep in mind that this is a budget title and for my money, it's worth every penny. It's got a classic gameplay style of putting you in levels that get pretty maze-like. You'll need to find keys and open locked doors, and your goal on each level is just to find the exit. There's also a bit of a platforming section to it, which I actually think are done quite well. They're not overused and the controls are so solid that actually making the tricky jumps always feels fair and is your fault if you mess up. You will want to explore as much as possible so you can find all the weapons, health and ammo, as the bad guys here can be a pain in the ass. The enemies you fight start out as your regular cult members in their robes. They've got knives and guns, so you'll want to be careful to start with. Soon though, you'll meet stronger members that have magic attacks, as well as some gross zombies that come in a few varieties, deadly spider skull things, ghosts and even some goat-like demons. I really like the designs here, and the game has a similar style to the enemies in Reverend, which is actually from the same developer and right up my alley. Of course, you get a nice amount of weapons to take the gits down with as well. You get pistols that you can dual wield, a shotgun, machine gun, explosive flasks, and so on. They're all good to use, and enemies mostly just run at you out of the darkness, so you'll need to be quick on your trigger finger. As you're exploring, you'll meet other priests that are in hiding. In fact, you'll also see a whole lot of them that weren't so lucky and have been murdered quite brutally. If you find the golden skulls on the levels, these can be traded for the priests for upgrades like more health and armour, which come in really handy as this is yet another reason to explore every inch of the levels. One thing that is missing though is a map. A lot of the levels here can be quite large and similar looking in terms of their corridors, however they're not too big that you'll get lost all that often. You will find bosses to fight here, and I actually really like the boss fights. Sometimes they're just large versions of smaller enemies, but every now and then you get a unique boss. These always need to be killed as they're always holding something that you'll need to progress. The graphics here are actually quite atmospheric. It is a nice mix of things that look digitised and some hand-drawn. Sometimes it can be hard to make out what things are as it is quite pixelated, but that is part of the art style and it doesn't really hinder you. It's more that I like to see the blood and guts in a higher resolution. I actually quite like the music here as well. It's very atmospheric and does a good job of having an eerie tone. To be honest, it was actually a bit of a relief from every other boomer shooter that I seem to play at the moment that just blasts metal music into your ears as soon as an enemy turns up. Now don't get me wrong, I love metal music and it really helps with the badass killing, but having a game like this that just keeps it spooky was nice. Also, it means that you're more surprised by enemies that pop out of nowhere as the music hasn't already let you know that they're there by turning into metal. This isn't a particularly long game, but in a good way. It's got a cool, creepy feel and is another one that I definitely recommend checking out. Man, I just realised that all the games here are dark and dreary affairs, so it's time to brighten things up with our last game. It's Fashion Police Squad. This is a really great retro style shooter where you play as a member of the Fashion Police, who are of course fighting the most awful crime, and that is the ones against fashion. It's a good job that I don't appear on camera in these videos, or they definitely would have come for me years ago. You're all getting all sorts of reports of a variety of fashion disasters, so each level sees you visiting different parts of the city and dealing with them, though there are some shady characters around who might just be behind the whole thing. As you're only dealing with fashion issues, not boring crimes like stabbings, you don't go around murdering people. However, you do still have an arsenal of guns and bombs that you'll need to fix the fashion faux pas. Levels will regularly introduce new clothing issues. For example, there's enemies with boring grey suits, some people with clothes that don't fit them properly, women literally wearing sacks on them, people wearing socks and sandals, and people that have their jeans way too low, and my favourites, those people that think they're edgy that wear that black shirt with flames on it and shit shades. What's cool is that each enemy needs to be dealt with in a different way, which is where the weapons all come in. Each one is needed for different enemies. Your starting weapon is a paintball gun. This is used against enemies that have no colour, or its secondary fire can be used to drain colour if there's someone out there that's wearing too much colour, and thankfully all your weapons have unlimited ammo. You get a needle gun which can be used to repair anyone that has ill-fitting clothes. Its secondary fire is a grenade that wraps people up and stops them from moving. You've got some gnomes, these are your grenades. These are actually gnomes that steal socks, so you'll want to use these against the people with footwear follies. You get a water gun to use against people that have fire shirts, and can also be used against the enemies that have ill-fitting clothes as it will shrink them down to size. And you also have your belt of justice. This can be charged up to whip people that need to pull up their trousers, among other offenders. There are more enemies and weapons, but I just don't have time to go through them all. But it works really well and is a great way of forcing you to switch weapons and prioritise enemies. And don't get me wrong, this game is a shooter through and through. You'll need to do circle strafing and bunny hops all over the place to avoid the enemy attacks, which are surprisingly tough. The levels themselves are pretty large, and you'll need to find scissors of various colours to cut ribbons to make progress. This is basically your key system. Getting around the levels is fun and fast, and one of the best mechanics here is using your belt as a whip to swing from various things. It just works really well, and it's so much fun swinging from lamppost to lamppost while shooting enemies. Another nice touch is that new enemies are always introduced with a cutscene, and the game just has a great sense of humour. As you fight the fashion villains, you build up a power bar. When this is full, you can go into fab mode, where you're invincible and can bitch slap anyone nearby, instantly fixing their clothes. I really like that mechanic. It all looks great too. Obviously they've made it bright and colourful, and I really like the designs on everything. The enemies look great, and the levels look good, and it's just a fun game to play. This could be written off as just a gimmicky game, but that really isn't the case. It's lots of fun, and is just as challenging as any of the other games we've got in this video. Do not overlook this one. So there you go, even more boomer shooters that you might want to check out. Keep giving me your suggestions, as I love these games and I just need more time to play them. On screen now you can see where else you can follow me, so why not do so? I've got loads of great content for everyone to enjoy. And now all that's left for me to say is thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time.